Hello, galactic soul family. Welcome back. And if you're new to my channel, my name is Gabbie, aka Witchy Vibes 11. I want to say welcome, and I hope you stay for the whole video. I know my videos are long. If you are here and you're new, it's not a coincidence. It's not a mistake. You may have been guided here. Maybe you were unconsciously guided here. It's possible that I have a puzzle piece for you so you can continue your spiritual journey, or maybe you're here because we have a soul contract for me to trigger you to help you along the way. There could be maybe you're here because you need to be coded by my codes, my frequency. Something within me is something that you need to give you that aha moment or that awareness. So take what resonates and leave what doesn't. And I welcome you. So let's talk about how dysfunctional families can breed narcissists, because you are not a narcissist by design. Being a narcissist is it's not a personality disorder. It's a behavior. It's a behavior that is learned. Chances are it's because you grew up in a family and it was a very traumatic childhood that you had. So if your parents, your lover, your friend, your boss, or even yourself has narcissistic tendencies, I'll tell you a possible reason as to why. It's a strategy that's learned to adapt to your surroundings. You learned to be a narcissist because it's likely you had to manipulate to get what you needed or wanted as a child or even as an adult, but most likely it stems from your childhood due to a dysfunctional family setting. Even the most woke and loving empath can still exhibit this behavior. A lot of light workers and souls that have advanced knowledge of self chooses to be born into this type of dynamic. It's a way to help them become who they're meant to be in this lifetime. Or it's set in place to help them remember who they truly are on an unconscious level until they reach a point of awareness where it all starts to make sense. Most of you know this. We're born with amnesia once we incarnate into this world, into this realm, onto Gaia, and our minds are just wiped clean. We don't remember anything once we're born. Being born into a dysfunctional family dynamic triggers your soul to remember in a way unconsciously. It's something you implemented before your birth into this world, and everyone involved in this dynamic that you're growing up in has a soul contract with you. It's like they're playing a part to help you become aware that you are not your body. You're a soul having an experience, a human experience. This is a challenge to become aware that you're not your body. It could take you your whole entire life to learn this. Also, being born into a dysfunctional family could be a choice. So your soul could have the human experience of that, whatever that experience is, whatever dysfunction you're growing up in, maybe your soul just wanted to experience that in a human form while wearing this, meat suit, this avatar, this vessel. Either way, you chose it. Not only did you choose your life, you are the creator, the co-creator. You're the creator as you come in, and then when you're in, you're the co-creator. And you can change the dynamic at any time once you become aware that you are divine. And once you are aware that you are a fractal of source, you are literally a godling. You have the power of source running through your veins. You are divine. You are light, activated, running this, making this body work, making your mind work. You are in control, but sometimes we just don't know that we're in control until we learn that we're in control. And learning and implementing it is not the same thing. Once you become aware that you're in control, it takes a lot of work to take control. So I grew up in a dysfunctional family, but I did not think it was dysfunctional until I was older to know the difference. My family was very selfish. We, not my family, we, all of us, we all had a lot of toxic traits. We were destructive and selfish. Even now as adults, there's a lot of separation between a lot of us as a whole. We were close, but now there is this separation amongst us, amongst all of us, and a lot of unhealed traumas. However, I did not know we were selfish until I got older. And as I started to awaken spiritually and do inner work, I started to see stuff that I had never noticed before. Or if I did notice it, I just brushed it off and I normalized it. I was like, oh, that's just how my family is. Yeah, that's just how I am, I do remember when I was little, I dreamed, not really dreamed, maybe fantasized or maybe daydreamed, I guess, of having the relationship or having a family relationship like Theodore Cleaver. The relationship he had with his family on Leave It to Beaver, or having Bill Crosby as a dad from The Crosby Show. Those two families showed lots of love and support to one another. They were reliable, responsible, and they practiced loving discipline. They engaged with their children. They had parents that talked to them, that explained why, if they did something wrong, they explained why they did something wrong, and explained how by making the wrong choices could, alter their life or change their life in a bad way or a negative way. They taught their kids with love and with respect. Now, as I write, what I'm sharing with you is stuff that I write down in my journal when I do my journaling. As I write in my journal, I wrote the word respect, and then I started to repeat the word respect. And it made me remember something, like it triggered something. It triggered a memory. And I had a visual of this memory. Respect was something we were not taught. Well, we were taught to respect our elders, okay? But no one showed us any respect. I remember, some of my mom's friends saying things like, hey, Gabe, you should not talk to your mother that way. Have some respect. I knew that I wasn't shown respect as a daughter or as a young child. I was not allowed to act like a child. I had so much responsibility as a young kid and as a young teen. I knew deep down respect was something that was earned. I knew that. Like, I felt that. Like, in my heart, I felt that. Like, you didn't have to tell me that, show me that, or teach me that. Like, I felt that. That's why I was so fiery and in comebacks when people would say stuff like that to me, because it's like, back then I didn't know that I was an old soul. Now that I'm an adult and I've come up, a long way on my journey, looking back, now I understand. It's because I was an old soul and I had like people telling me things that just didn't make sense because I felt it. Like, I knew the truth. I know I'm talking, about my parents, and, you should respect your parents at all costs, right? But they had a couple problems when I was younger. They had demons. And when I say demons, their demons were drugs and alcohol and lots of partying, lots of friends, lots of people in and out of our house, lots of change, lots of just things that I guess I wouldn't do as a parent. But back then, it kind of was normal, but it was not really normal. Like, there were times being a kid, I'm like, oh, this is not normal, you know? And I took care of my brother and my mother's daughter at a young age. And I felt I was grown enough to have equal respect shown to me. So when somebody said, Gabe, have respect, I felt that I should have been treated as an equal. So if you want respect, treat me with respect. This was not taught to me. It was a feeling I've always had, and it was like a truth I've always known. I was way too mature at such a young age, and that maturity was forced onto me. Even though today I know I chose that life. I chose this life. I chose the dynamic I was put in. I chose my parents. I chose my siblings. I chose, the narrative. I chose that. I was born into it because I chose it. But I did not know that back then. I did not witness my parents, my guardians, the adults in my life show respect to their elders or themselves or us as kids. So when they spoke about respect, I was reflecting what they were teaching and showing. And they did not like what I was reflecting. Normally, that wasn't called reflecting. That would have been called misbehaving. And I got punished for it. Our parents disciplined us. And when I say us, I'm referring to my brother and I. They disciplined my brother and I. And discipline is being kind. We got our butts beat. We got the belt. And I'm sure there's a lot of old school people listening to this, and they're like, well, yeah, that's how it was done back then. But we didn't just get the belt. My dad had a fat belt, a skinny belt, and a horse crop. Depending on what you did wrong is what you got beat with. So if you were bad, you got the fat belt. That was like the basic beating. If you were real bad, it was like, you get me the skinny belt. The skinny belt hurt really bad. And it left little thin welts on your body when you got hit with that. Also, if you really pissed them off or you did something really, really naughty, you got hit with the horse crop. A horse crop, for those of you that don't know, is like this stick that's made out of this like bendable plastic that's wrapped in leather and has like a little leather tassel or piece of leather at the end of it. And when you get hit with the whole thing just sucks and it hurts. It's what they use in horse racing. When you see the jockey slapping the horse on the butt with it, that's what my dad used to spank us with. And that junk hurt. It hurt. I guess it's kind of like getting hit with a stick that you pull off a tree, but with leather attached to it. So we lived with our father, and we were hit for doing, well, not for doing, for not doing like our chores, certain things like not doing the dishes, um, or chopping wood, which was my brother's job, was to chop wood. Mind you, he was 9 years old. Um, we got hit for arguing with each other or sassing back the babysitter, you know, um, for not picking up after ourselves, um, from getting sent home from our mom's house and not listening to her, um, coming home from our friend's house late. I mean, you name it. We got disciplined for it. Um, we had to be home before the streetlights came on. So if the streetlights were on and we walk in that door and my dad was home, we got it. But we had this freedom, and I'll get to that in a minute here. We had this freedom, and because my dad, um, he drank, and he liked to drink at the bar, so we could get away with coming home late because we kind of knew what time he would come home from the bar. So we had some loopholes, here and there. Unless, he had a girlfriend at the time, or one of his friends came over to babysit us, then they would tattle on us and tell my dad that, we weren't home or whatever. And that's how we would get caught and get in trouble. Or maybe even the neighbor would tell on us, and that's how we'd get caught too. So yeah, we got disciplined for just about everything, anything. Our parents did not, sit us down to talk, to us about anything. My mother, I do remember my mother, when we were really young, and I'm talking like, my memory goes back to maybe being like 5. I remember my mom would sit my brother and I down, and when we did something, or we, wrong, or we misbehaved, she would sit us, or she did sit us down and talk to us. She tried. I remember a few times her doing that, but after about 6 years old, that didn't really happen anymore. But her demons were bigger and stronger than her, and I'll get to that in a minute too. She struggled with being a full-time mom and a wife, and she struggled to be happy in her own skin. She struggled to be herself. She's been in a constant battle, spiritually, I believe, mentally, spiritually, and physically. So when we were bad, she mostly would threaten us. And, if you don't behave, I'm going to hit you, I'm going to hit you, I'm going to hit you. And every once in a while, maybe she would throw like a slipper or something at us, but that was about it. But if, we pushed her past her limit, then how she would punish us is she would lock us up in the closet. And we had one of those old houses where you had the skeleton key to lock like the closet doors and the bedroom doors and the basement door and stuff like that. So we would get locked in the closet. I laugh, but I mean, thinking about that, it's kind of crazy because I could not imagine locking my kids in the closet. She does regret it today, and she talks about it all the time. She talks about how much it hurts her when she thinks about it, and she wishes that she could go back and do it all over again because it really hurts her heart. And that's why she's such an awesome grandmother, because, she learned. And, I love her for that. I love her because she allowed herself awareness. She learned, she grew. My father did not explain why we were in trouble most of the time. He did not explain why we were in trouble. And if he did, he kind of just yelled what we did wrong. Yell, 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 yell. Hit, 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 and yell at the same time. We just got belted and lectured, basically. And when I say lectured, I mean yelled at. He basically laid into us and would complain, how hard we were making his life, or, whatever. Or my father had, I don't know, he was very, yeah, he was harsh. He was harsh. You know, my father had his demons too. Um, his were not as transparent as my mother's. He was and is a mystery. Um, our dad, I was going to say was aggressive. He still is aggressive, but he's not a hitter anymore because we're adults. He's just very hot-tempered, aggressive. He's still a yeller today. Like when you sit down and have a conversation with him, he just can't have a conversation and talk. He has to yell. He's very aggressive. As a father, our dad was aggressive and he was an angry person, and he still is. And he took out his anger on us. Mostly, I want to say mostly my brother. My brother really got it like a man. My father treated my brother like a man. He roughed him up a lot. And we both got belted. When he disciplined us, he would grab our faces, like our cheeks, and he would like grab our faces and yell at us, or like he would like grab our heads and bump our heads together when he was lecturing us and talking to us. Well, I shouldn't say talk, when he was yelling at us. He'd sit us on the couch in front of him, and he'd sit on the coffee table, and he would just yell, 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 and point his fingers in our face and like, you know, push our forehead with his finger. Are you listening to me? And push his forehead or his finger against our forehead. And then if he didn't think we were listening, he would bump our heads together to kind of like wake us up, because he thinks like if we weren't like, you know, going off into la la land, and he would say, is it going in one ear, not the other? And then bang, he would bang our heads together to bring us back, you know, to pay attention to him. Or he would like knock on our head and say, hello, McFly. He was mean. Dude, he was mean. If he would say something, if we didn't dare talk back when he was yelling at us like that, because he was so hot-tempered. But yeah, that was his favorite thing, was to knock on our head and be like, hello, McFly, why did you do that? You don't understand that that's blah, 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 blah. Knock, 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 hello, McFly. You know, if we did something stupid, that was his favorite thing to, you know, do. Something that we thought was stupid, but, you know, he did anyways. He thought we were just too stupid to do the right thing. And it just pissed him off, because it was like we were always doing the wrong thing, and then we were always getting yelled at, and then it would escalate and escalate and escalate, from yelling to grabbing to banging our heads together to squeezing our faces together to knocking on our heads and poking at our foreheads and stuff like that. The worst thing he did, and you would think that knocking our heads together was the worst thing, I hated when he squeezed our cheeks together and yelled at us and just would not let go of our face. And it would just be a long, drawn-out speech as he'd have our face. It could be over anything at all. And it could be like if you didn't do our chores correctly or at all, or most of the time it's because we didn't put the TV clicker on the coffee table, you know, before we went to bed, and he couldn't find it. And he'd pull us out of bed to find it. And it could be 2 o'clock in the morning. He'd pull us out of bed, do that lecture thing, squeeze our face together, you know, bang our heads, knock on our heads, call McFly, stuff like that. And you'd be like, you put the TV clicker right here, you know, and he'd show us 100 times. And then he'd be like, capiche, while holding our face together. And we would have to say capiche back. But it was so hard because our faces were being squeezed. And then we would cry because we couldn't say capiche, and he wouldn't let go of our face until we understood. That's what capiche means. Like, do you understand? So we had to say that to let him know that we understand, and for him to release our face. Oh, man. I'm just so glad I'm not that little girl anymore, because I hated that. I hated that discipline. A lot of you know my story. I left home when I was 15. Um, his discipline was very aggressive, very abusive. This way of discipline was abusive. And my father would, like I said, pull us out of bed at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, to punish us. That's abusive. He would yell at us like we were dogs. I think he was just frustrated and angry most of the time, and he took it out on us. We did not get acknowledged, if we did the right thing. So, when we did the wrong thing, we were acknowledged and we were abused for it. But when we did something good, we were not acknowledged at all. We didn't get we didn't get to hear anything like, wow, I'm so proud of you for doing your chores. Or, the house looks great. You guys did a great job on the house. Or, oh, I'm very proud of you for getting a B in math. Or, I'm proud that both of you are behaving and you guys are getting along. Let's go get an ice cream. We never got to hear those words or that kind of embrace from my father. Now, our friends' parents did that, that kind of stuff. They engaged with their children in a positive way, but not our parents. It was just expected of us. However, as kids, we really did not know what was truly expected of us. No one ever really sat us down to talk to us. We were to just figure it out on our own. And the way we learned is we were grounded for not doing something that we were supposed to, or we were beat for doing something we weren't supposed to. So that's how we learned how to do things the right way, because we were grounded a lot. And because we were grounded a lot and we didn't know, and being grounded, you can't get things. So we learned to manipulate. Well, at least I did. I learned to manipulate to get attention, because I was always grounded, and it just sucked. Now, I'm making my father out to be this like really awful monster, even though I'm not going to take it back. He was an awful monster. But I'm not going to justify his behavior, but he is very sorry today. And he thinks about it. It haunts him. He sits on his porch. There's times, and a lot of you guys know that I'm my father's caregiver. Me and my husband and I. There's times that out of the blue at 8 o'clock at night, my father will call me and say, Gabe, I just want to tell you that I love you and I'm really sorry. And I'll ask him, what's he sorry for? And he'll tell me, there was a time when you were little and I did this to you because I was mad at you. And he goes, I'm really sorry for that. He goes, I was such an asshole as a father. And I just wanted to call you and I want to tell you that I'm sorry. And I love you. And I wish I never did that to you. And it breaks my heart, because it's things that were done that you can't take back. But there's an awareness in love and in recognizing that actions were taken, and it's kind of like it breaks my heart, but it swells my heart too. Like I want to get teary-eyed, because it's like I forgive him, and I've already forgiven both of my parents, and it's an understanding that I have, an awareness that I have that they didn't, but they're starting to, get at an older age, but they have regrets about it, and they're looking for forgiveness because they can't forgive themselves. So even though he was definitely a monster when we were kids, he did love us, and he does love us. He just has a really weird way to show it. So I thought TV families were the way all families were. how all families were supposed to be. And I felt we had a broken family because some of my friends had families like you see on TV, but we did not. We had like the Bart Simpson family or the Roseanne Barr family. But I accepted it because sometimes having that freedom, remember I was just talking about freedom a few moments ago, having that freedom of not having a parent around all the time, breathing down your neck, we could get away with things that some of my friends could not get away with. I could sneak people into my house, sneak people out of my house. I could sneak out to parties. I didn't really have a curfew. Well, I had a curfew, but it wasn't implemented because if they weren't home, how could they implement it? You know what I mean? So, we got away with a lot of stuff. We had a lot more freedom than our friends did because our friends had parents that engaged with them and taught their kids structure. They had a bedtime. They had chores to do before the bedtime. They had homework to do before the bedtime. And they had like this whole program they had to do on school nights. So they really couldn't even hang out on school nights because they had structure. And we did not have structure. And their parents showed them genuine interest. So when their parents came home from work, it was, they put their work life aside and they engage with their children and they go and take them to football or brownies or soccer or whatever it is, gymnastics. And they had this whole like structured schedule, something we did not have. And sometimes I was like, I am so glad that I do not have to wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning to go to gymnastics class, So we kind of had that freedom. But that freedom came with a price. So please keep in mind, this was everything I was feeling before I went through my awakening. So everything I'm talking about might sound really awful and dark and mean and just like, hateful, maybe even a lot. But this is me journaling my memories. So everything I'm talking about is before I went through my awakening, all my feelings that I had before going through my awakening and had my awareness and before I did my inner work. Okay? So back to my family. Our family lacked mental and emotional well-being. We were a close family in one way, and for a short time, we were a close family, like really, really close. Camping every year, doing family stuff when my parents were married. But on the other hand, we were not a close family, if that makes sense. I don't even know how to make that make sense, but that's just the sense that it is in this dysfunctional family, in this dynamic that I grew up in. I'll tell you why we were not. We were close, okay? I'll try to explain. But not so close is because we were not really shown love. Our parents didn't really express themselves, and they especially didn't express themselves in a healthy way. They didn't say like, come here, I love you, I'm so proud of you, give me a hug. Maybe that's why I'm not a hugger, because it's so weird, because I was never embraced that way as a child. So I've just always, I grew up without that kind of love. When I see it, I can feel it in my heart. When I see other people embrace each other, and when people try to hug me, I can feel it. But it's really awkward for me to feel, to engage that way and show love. So that's something I have struggled with is, opening up and sharing how I feel and talking about my feelings, because I never grew up that way, because nobody ever talked about how they felt, and they never, went through their emotions. It was just yelling or everything was cool. And that's it, you know? Um, so yeah, that's what I mean when I say our family's close but not close when we were little, is they didn't really show love. They didn't express themselves in a healthy way. We did not, as we got older, we did not support each other or highlight each other's goals or have each other's back or support each other's well-being. We bashed each other and we talked about each other and we talked about everything that did not please us or accept in each other. We fed off of that. Like if we knew that, like my brother couldn't stand my feet, so he would talk about my feet all the time. And he knew that that would hurt me. So he'd talk about it and joke about it. But to be more harsh, if if for instance somebody in my family, okay, so think of this kind of a dynamic. What if you were growing up in a family? I mean, this is not the dynamic I grew up in, but I could tell you how it would play out in my family. Maybe you are gay or lesbian and you like the same sex, or there's something different about you that you know your family would not accept. My family would be that family. If I was, I'm not, but if I was to come out to my family and say, hey, I'm a lesbian, my family would have ridiculed me. They would have laughed at me, or they definitely would not have accepted it, and they would have gossiped about me. That's the kind of dynamic I grew up in. So when I say that I grew up in a family that did not support each other or have each other's back, that support would have just, there was none. We lacked that kind of support. Highlighting goals. So like say I had a goal to become a doctor or something, or a lawyer or something, that would make me a lot of money in my future. My family would be like, yeah, right, you're too stupid. And they would laugh and they would put you down and they would bash you and then they would kick you while you're down. My family had no loving support. Nothing. And as kids and teenagers, we fed off of that. We fed off of that fear and flaws of one another. And we picked each other apart like vultures. We stomped each other when we were down. We did not lift each other up. And I was guilty of that. If you attack, I attack back. There was no love. There was no understanding. I feel my family lacked empathy in a way and awareness. They definitely lacked awareness of how other people felt or how other people would feel. When I say my family, I'm including myself back then. I was guilty of all of these behaviors. I was a little asshole, just like the rest of them. We were mean, very mean to each other. I feel like we grew up like savages. Now that I'm reading this out loud, I feel like I'm a savage. I feel like a savage. I really don't like this feeling. The relationships towards one another in our family has always caused emotional, mental, and even physical pain. It hurts me at a soul level knowing that I'm aware now that there is a disconnect in my family and that my family is so unaware. Sometimes they acknowledge the disconnect, but they don't put any healthy work into repairing it. They just complain and talk and gossip and they still continue to put down and attack. They want to just continue to attack. They don't want to fix the problem or put the work in to fix themselves so the problem can be fixed. Again, I'm guilty of having these traits as well until I started to put the work in And when I say put the work in, I mean putting in the spiritual work, the inner work, the shadow work, forgiveness. And forgiveness helped me create awareness. Awareness is key. Awareness is key. Inner work helped me love myself. Loving myself allowed me to love unconditionally. Loving myself showed me how to forgive others and not judge people. Just accept people for who they are. It helped me understand why people act the way they do. Why people project the way they do. And their projections, when I started to heal and do the inner work, people's projections did not trigger me to want to attack. Because I had this awareness and this understanding. I had leveled up. Not saying that I'm better than them. I'm just on a, I don't even want to say on a different level, because that kind of sounds like a snob. But it's like being on I'm in a different a vibration. I'm vibing differently. I'm just aware, I guess. That's just the only way you could put it. I'm aware. So that awareness has brought an understanding into my life. It's like pulling the curtain back. I can see behind the curtain. So I'm able to, loving myself. I can see why people project the way they do, and why some people are narcissists. So this is where narcissists come in, because like my parents are narcissists. I was a narcissist. I still am. I can still be a narcissist at times. But now I do a lot of work on watching what I think and watching what I say and how I say it and how I think it and what I do. So I'm healing from those narcissistic traits. But I am aware that I still do have some of those narcissistic tendencies. Most of it is trauma from my childhood and from pain. And when I see it in other people, I recognize it as trauma in some way. Could be from their childhood or from some sort of pain that they went through that got them to where they are today. So I have this understanding, and I don't hold it against people. And the thing I do is I send them love. I just send them love. I know that kind of sounds like, airy fairy, like weirdo, like Buddhist stuff. But I mean, it's really what I do. I send them love. Unconditional love. I learned that we are responsible for our own trauma responses. Forgiveness, healing, and awareness. And I'm going to say it again. Awareness is key, because it is. Awareness is the key. As an adult that has done my inner work and worked on my awareness, how I think, what I say, how I act, how I react, I can see that nothing has changed in our family, in our family's dynamic. It's still dysfunctional. It's not functioning at a better, higher vibration. It's still dysfunctional. It's still in a low vibration. There were, what was I going to say here? I think I skipped where I was going to say. Oh yeah, I did skip. So because no one has taken any responsibility to own up to the dysfunction, there is still some dysfunction going on in the family. They have to admit that there's dysfunction. And they won't. They might, but they don't take action. You have to take responsibility. So they're really not admitting to it unless they're willing to take responsibility. So you have to admit that they are taking part of this dysfunction. It's kind of like being in an addiction program. In an addiction program, step one, you admit you have a problem. I've admitted this, and I'm still healing from this. In a dysfunctional family dynamic, the first step is to become aware. This is the first step in moving towards healthy functioning. You can't teach what you don't know, and you can't change what you're not aware of. So I'm healing from it, but still in pain because the dysfunctional family dynamic is still operating in a low vibration of service to self, hate, fear, pain, trauma, abuse, addiction, and unforgiveness. The family is operating and taking action only for themselves in unawareness and selfishness. No one is being reliable. If you want to heal from a family dysfunction, you have to take these steps. And step two is to heal. To heal from this, you have to take ownership. So you have to admit, and then you have to take ownership. Take ownership. Being aware allows you to take ownership. Taking ownership of your actions, your attitudes, your beliefs, and your emotions. Admit and take action to what you are owning up to. Take responsibility for your actions. Now, I've learned to observe my family. Well, my family doesn't really talk to me. But when I started to become aware, we were kind of still talking, and I was observing. I sat back and observed everyone's behavior at parties and gatherings and seen how they reacted with each other. I compared my family to other families' interactions and how my family handled similar situations. I've had conversations recently, actually, with my brother. My brother and I, we don't talk like we used to, but maybe the relationship is healing. That's what I hope. And maybe, I'm allowing him to come around, maybe I'm holding space. There's nothing here of hate. So I put it out there that I love them. So, what is it? The olive branch. I sending out an olive branch and I made my peace already years ago, and they just want nothing to do with me. But my brother's starting to come around more and more. So I recently just had a conversation with my brother about how our family operates, was actually our conversation. And I mentioned that our family overreacts. And he shared with me a story about being at his friend's house and seeing how they sat down to dinner and how they interacted with each other. We don't express ourselves in our family. And he agreed, we don't express ourselves in our family. We have a tendency to get angry and just cut people off and never allow closure. It was just like, okay, you pissed me off, but I don't know that I pissed you off, but you cut me out. And now I'm over here like, why am I cut out of the family? What did I do? And when I try to ask, I'm blocked on all the social media, blocked on making phone calls or text messaging, and then I'm gossiped about. And it's like, well, what the freak did I do? Like, why can't we talk like grown-ups? Like, I'm your sister. We're blood. Like, I understand getting into squabbles, maybe not talking for a couple months, but years, yeah, that's just hurtful. But I surrendered to it. There's nothing I can do about it. And just try to understand that maybe it's a trauma response, and I forgive, and that's all I can do. I love and miss my brother a lot. We had a lot of good times together. He was very close to me, and Now, he's very distant, and it's hurtful. Um, but he's coming around, and I enjoy our short conversations when he does call, or when we do talk to each other. But yeah, we had a conversation where we shared about how we acknowledged how our family handles situations really different compared to how our friends and family, you know, act, how their actions are, and how they don't overreact to anything. It seems like, they speak their minds, they listen, and they actually hear each other. They listen to each other. They engage with each other. They support each other. They love each other. And if they disagree with something, it's a healthy disagreement. It's not psychotic. It's not yelling. It's not stomping your feet and slamming doors and cutting people out of your life. It's not talking about anybody and bashing anybody and cutting people, cutting them down. None of this is how our family that's how our family acts, but none of our family acts like the way we see our friends. Our friends are so, I don't know, I would say normal. It's like that's the normal thing to do, the adult thing to do, and our family is just not stable or healthy the way they act, the way they react. And I wish things could be different. I have observed how this toxic or dysfunctional trait has possibly created, how it was possibly created within our family, because it had to start from somewhere. For me, as us, being the children, my father would have been the cause of our trauma. I feel that my father has unhealed trauma. He never really spoke about family much. He did he spoke about family when my brother and I were small, but things changed when I was about 5 or 6. We were really close as a family. It was my brother, myself, my mother, and my father. We went to Vermont. We went camping all the time. I do remember going to get ice cream. I remember picking pumpkins. I remember doing, that normal family stuff, like Easter egg hunts and stuff like that. Just being like a little family, brother, sister, mom, dad. And always having family over. My Uncle Roger, my cousins were always around. We were always going to Grandma Trudy's house. We were always close until I think it was about 6 years old. There was a shift. And I think I know why. I feel like I know why. I feel my dad's trauma may have begun later on in his life. I don't really know too much about how my dad's family life was. Like, my dad's family just seemed so leave it to beaver. It was so wholesome. But I mean, judging a book by its cover is not always best. But my grandparents were awesome. My grandparents were the glue to this family. When my parents divorced, my grandparents were there. Everything that my parents weren't there for, my grandparents were there for. My grandparents kept us cousins together. My grandparents took us to Six Flags and museums and engaged with us the way our parents should. So I feel like, I don't know. But then again, we learn from our childhood and we become wiser and better as we grow older. So maybe my grandparents were just awesome because, they grew wiser. But I don't know. I really don't know too much about the way my dad was as a child, or how his upbringing was. It seemed, from the outside looking in, it seemed good. But I feel like my dad's trauma may have started later on in life. Because I remember, doing all that family stuff until, like I said, I was about 5, 6 years old. And then, his brother died. His brother died in a motorcycle accident. The disconnect may have started there when he lost his brother. That's very traumatic, to lose a sibling. And he was close to his brother. And then I feel that it got worse when he got divorced, lose a brother, get divorced, and then your mom moves out of state, and then your dad moves out of state, and then your sister moves out of state, you know? And after that, my dad was not very family oriented anymore. He was very distant, like his family. His family was long distance, you know, away, far away, making them distant. My dad became distant from family. I feel like it affected him. My father was not much of a family man after that. He didn't really care. He wanted to be out with friends and do drugs. Like drugs were his getaway. Like, you know, I don't consider weed a drug, but like doing cocaine, stuff like that, that's the drug of choice that my dad slipped away to. And he kind of lost his soul to that. That was his demon. And alcohol. That's what helped take his pain away. You know, he did not go out of his way to check on his parents when they moved away. He wasn't close to them anymore. It was like, oh, they're far away. They left me. That was probably traumatic for him, you know? So when they were alive, he didn't really check on them. They lived in Florida, North Carolina. After they moved away to other states, he became another person. My father never went out of his way to check on us as kids. He still doesn't. He doesn't even go out of his way to check on his grandkids. He's still very distant in a family way. But I forgive him because of his demons, because of his trauma, because I understand that he did not know how to heal from his trauma. I always say that if our parents could have done better, they would have. Now, my mom, she did try her hardest to make up for moving away. She was there during the holidays, birthdays. She came around when she was in town to see us off to school, to cook us breakfast before we went to school, stuff like that. You know, she did that stuff when she was in town. And then when she moved back home, we got to go see her on weekends, and she called us every single night. She checked out. She worried about us, but she wasn't, because of her demons, she wasn't responsible. And she knew that. So that's why she gave custody to my father. At least she was honest. I mean, this is my memory, of course. I remember all the bad stuff because it affected me more deeply than the good stuff did. There were good times. I know I'm talking a lot about bad times and traumatic stuff, but that's I remember that more than anything. Don't get me wrong, we had some really good times as a family, and I could sit here and tell you the beautiful moments, but the bad moments, they pierce the heart differently. The pain is worse. It makes it more memorable. There were more bad than good, and you know that's the sad truth. I know they loved us, but there was a lot that they were both dealing with within themselves. Their demons were huge. Most likely it was their dysfunctional dynamics, their dysfunctional family dynamics that were passed down to them, and they were not healed. They did not know how to heal from that, so that they just continued to grow more demons in their life because of all that unhealed trauma. I know my mom had a very sad life. I know her history. She shared with me. Sorry, my video cut off, so this is part 2 of part 1, just in case I'm unable to merge these two together because I am recording on my cell phone. So I think I left off on the last video saying I know my mom had a very sad life, and I know her history. She shared it with me as an adult, but I also knew some of it as a child. And knowing her past and being aware of it helped me understand her action as my mom. it helped me forgive her. So number 4 in healing from this, you have to evaluate your relationships with your family members. If they're not going so well and benefiting you both, you need to create boundaries. And if the boundaries, if they're unable to, if they keep crossing your boundaries, you may have to cut them out until there is some healing taking place. I feel that doing shadow work has brought a lot of this to the surface for me. I have awareness of these dynamics. And it's like a childish game that I refuse to play. I struggled with mental and emotional trauma, and I played out the dynamic I grew up in, and I normalized it. That is why inner work is so important, and awareness is key to understanding. Forgiveness is freeing. The story I was telling myself to normalize the dysfunction was my dad wanted me to succeed in life, and he was so rough and so hard on me that by giving me so many responsibilities that included raising my siblings, cooking and cleaning and being responsible to keep my brother out of trouble, was because he was preparing me for the real world, to become a responsible, respectable housewife, a strong, independent woman, when in reality, my father's motivations were selfish. This is where narcissists come in. His motivation was selfish. It was probably done unconsciously. It was to benefit him, not me. No matter how it affected me, it was never for me. It was a way to teach me to do the stuff he didn't want to do or be bothered with, because my mother wasn't around. She moved out of state, and they were divorced, and he was a single dad that did not want to pay a babysitter, or maybe he just didn't want to take us to the babysitter. He was, got to get up, go to work, and it was just too much of a responsibility. So he taught me to be a young mom at 7 years old. I did not realize this back then. It never felt right, but I had nothing to compare it to. I normalized my mom moving away when things got rough. I used to say, out of sight, out of mind. I used to believe that when the things going on in my life, when they got tough, I could just walk away from them or move away, go to another town, meet new people, get a new job, different atmosphere. Problems will be gone and they'll fade away. And that's not the truth. That's furthest from the truth. So as an adult, as a young adult, I was unstable because I moved a lot. I was always running away. I was always moving away. I was always looking for something. There was 2 reasons why I moved a lot. Most of the time it's because if I had a problem, I just moved away from them or I ran away from them. And the other thing was I was searching for something. I was searching for something that felt like home. And I could never find that anywhere. I finally did now, but from being 15 to the age of even when I met my husband and married him, we moved a lot, but it wasn't because of that. He sings for a living, and we moved to different states and cities, because I was hired to work at certain arenas and events, to market events. And we were moved to like Miami and Florida, Naples, Florida, and Massachusetts and Rhode Island, stuff like that. And I enjoyed that kind of moving to do it for business, but I finally became stable, maybe like 7-8 years ago, something like that, when I finally moved upstate, and now we bought a house. So that's where I'm at now. So, it changed. I did a lot of work. Coming up this way to upstate New York helped me heal, helped me in my healing process. I'm still healing. I'm not totally healed. I'll probably heal all the way until I exit this avatar. So doing the inner work helped me see the bigger picture. This does not make my dad or my mom bad people. They're just unconsciously aware of their behavior. I'm going to say it again. That inner work is so important. Awareness is key to understanding, and forgiveness is freeing. I had no idea my home was a toxic environment mentally until I became an adult. My toxic trait as an adult was to normalize the dysfunction I grew up in. Living with narcissistic parents trained me on how to adapt to dysfunction. Also, growing up with narcissistic parents, I attracted narcissists into my life. I dated narcissists because I was used to it. That's kind of like what I looked for. But having this narcissism in my life and this dysfunction in my life, I adapted to it. I was used to it, you know. For whatever reason, if for whatever reason my family ever decided to listen to my YouTube video, they would probably be angry and then deny that they would be angry, but they would definitely deny, most likely deny that there was any dysfunction. And they would most definitely be hurt. And it would anger them to shine light on the darkness that was never spoken about, because our family doesn't speak about stuff. They don't express their emotions. That's why I speak about this. I'm not ashamed to speak about this. There could be people out there listening to this be like, oh my God, this girl's putting it all out there, telling us all the business. No, I'm not. I'm choosing to do this. I'm speaking up and I'm speaking out. This is healing for me. If that's how you feel, then you need to do some inner work on yourself, because now you're projecting. But anyways, the disconnection and separateness amongst my siblings, between them and myself, and them with our parents, has went on, way too long, far too long in our family. No one would even bring up the fact that they even listened to my videos. Well, they would not bring it up to me or face me about it. They would never want me to know that they watched it, because then they would have to admit that they care. They cared enough to listen. We're so disconnected. We're strangers. And it's sad because I love my siblings. I really do miss my brother. My sister too, I don't know. She's very different. But I love them both. They don't care about my interests or my well-being. So they would probably not even watch this. And like I said, if they did, they would admit to it. They would not admit to it. My parents, on the other hand, they would definitely say something. I know my mother would. She'd say something. But it would be the opposite of what I felt and what I said. They would both say something like, I'm too young. I was too young to know what was really going on. That's what they would tell me. And they would totally dismiss my feelings and then try to justify why this and that. And they would definitely not bat an eye to try to see my perspective. They would just be like, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. And that's it. End of story. They would automatically just shut me down. I still love them. Even if they did do that and they did listen, I still love them. So if you're listening, you guys, I love you. I still love you and I still forgive you. That's not going to change. Because today I know why these dynamics are playing out. I'm aware. I hope to be the catalyst to help them become aware and do some inner work. So maybe if they did listen to this video, maybe it would help them become aware. I did a lot of inner work when I realized I had how can I put this? I did do a lot of inner work, especially when I realized I had these traits, when I recognized that I had these habits and these traits, and I didn't like it. Awareness led me to inner work that expanded my awareness more. I also adapted to these traits. I have not totally healed from them. I have my own coping strategies in life. It's like coping with addiction in a way. So this dysfunctional family, the dynamics in this family has its side effects. And for me, even when I was younger, I was a people pleaser and I wanted to please people and I craved attention. Now, as an adult, I was still trying to please people. I hated myself for it. It made me hate the people I was trying to please because I hated myself because I was not being authentic. And the pleasing was not coming from love. I did it for acceptance and validation and recognition. I was a person that said yes when I really, really, really wanted to say no. I could not say no. I was afraid if it would cause friction in whatever relationship I had with the person I wanted to say no to. It's not like that anymore for me, but those were some of my coping skills. That one I kind of nipped in the bud because I say no now. I've created boundaries because boundaries are important. I also ran away from my problems and moved a lot. I just talked about all that. But even though I did a lot of that moving and running away, that moving and running away also was a blessing. Like there was that problem, right? But within that problem, it's like with those lemons, I made lemonade. So even though I moved around a lot, I met so many beautiful people along the way. Those people were important in my life, in my healing, in my spiritual growth. I met a lot of my soul family and healed what needed to be healed along the way. I also got to see how other people lived and how they interacted with their families. I got to see different cultures and different lifestyles than the one I grew up in. It's like I got out in the world. I didn't leave like the United States, but I got out in the world. I left the town, or not the town, the city that I grew up in. I grew up in Rochester, New York, and I moved away when I was 15. And I've been in Florida, I've been in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New York City. I've been all over Florida. I've been all over New York. I kind of been all over Massachusetts too. I guess when I pick a state, I go all over it. But yeah, but I got out. I got to see different stuff, just all kinds of cool things. And it was very healing as well. One of the other coping strategies is I became a pro on how to manipulate people to get what I wanted. At times, it was the only way to get what I wanted or needed at times as a child or as a young adult. Now, my two oldest children adopted that trait from me. That's their coping mechanism because I was no better than my parents. I mean, I wasn't into like drugs and stuff like that, but as a parent, mentally, I was no better than my parents. I could see how they adapted. I recognized the coping traits once I became aware. I was so good at it, I recognized it every single time they tried to use it on me. So I'm also very hyper aware of people's energy. And, this is a coping mechanism too. I became very hyper. I learned how to bring my gifts online and my hyper awareness. My ability to read energy was put online by being put into this family dynamic, this dysfunctional family dynamic. So I'm very hyper aware of people's energy. And that was a coping skill for me. I had to learn. And I learned how they behave, and I learned to pay attention and spot their subtle movements. I knew that the slightest movement of the body meant, I knew what it meant, or what they were up to, or what they wanted to do, or what they were about to do. I could feel them. Their energy spoke louder than words. I read energy better than listening to people. I learned this because I needed to manipulate, or I had to constantly read people in my life to please them or stay out of trouble or to get out of trouble. So I unconsciously learned how to pick up on energy and actions and eye movements and body language. Even the tone of voice people used, I was hyper aware of. And I was very, very aware of the words people used and how they used those words, which is a good trait for me to have today. I've always had empathy. I had empathy and healing skills as a child and wanted to protect and care for the people in my life, for my siblings, for the narcissists in my family, for my parents. Even though sometimes I was mad at them, I always wanted to, make them better. I always felt bad when I would see them sad and hurting. Narcissists are wounded warriors in a way. My parents had their friends around, and their friends were all narcissists. And when I would see them over, it was like there was a sadness in everybody that I could see and feel. And I wanted to make them happy and heal them in a way. I could feel their fear and their pain. I wanted to just do things, like I said, to make them happy, even if I was enabling their addictions. And I'm not like talking about their drug addictions, but I'd be like, yeah, can I get you a beer? And I want to get you a beer. And you go running off to the refrigerator and get everybody beers because beer made everybody happy and everybody would laugh and have a party and have a good time. So it was like, you want a beer? So I go run off and, Dad, you want a beer? I was enabling his addiction because I wanted to see him happy. Mom, you want a beer? Can I have a beer? Just kidding. I still have that trait, that skill. It's not a trait, it's a skill now. But I feel like I still do it now as an adult. Now, my dad does not drink anymore. He doesn't do hard drugs anymore. He just, smokes his grandpa's medicine, and that's because he's in pain. But I still find that I have that, I want to make you happy and enable, so I still want to do things to make my dad happy, and I'm that enabler sometimes. So a lot of you know that my dad is diabetic. So something he did to himself, and I see him sad sometimes, and I want to make him happy. So I want to bring him cookies because that will perk him up and that'll make him happy. But, and then when I see him happy, I'm happy. But that's me enabling him. And cookies are bad because he's a diabetic. Like, they're bad. But in reality, I can't because they're not healthy for him, He's the diabetic where he's got to take the insulin. He's got to take the shot every single time he eats. He's got to check his numbers like 100 times a day because his numbers fluctuate from high to low in the snap of a finger. It's crazy. For my mom, when I was a kid, I don't know. When I was a kid, I kind of had a grudge against my mom for leaving. So I was always kind of mean to her, and I were just like always mad at her. But as I became a young teenager, because I became a young mom, I got pregnant at 16, and it was like 16 and a half because I had turned 17, and then my son was born a week later. My mom became more of my friend. My mom has always been a friend and not a mom, but she was more my friend. And I wasn't so angry with her when I was a teenager, but I was still kind of angry with her, but not like I was when I was a kid. I guess I was, but the anger was different. But now as an adult, that forgives her mother. I'm still an enabler in a way. I do things, I'm like her crutch when she needs to not have a crutch, I guess. But my mom's a strong woman, so there's really not much I can say about her. She's really come a long way. I mean, we all have our demons, but I'm really proud of my mom. She's come a really long way, and she's learning as she goes. And she just turned, I believe, 64, and she has this awareness, and I'm proud of her. And I feel like it's because I'm the catalyst in her life, and I'm helping her see things that she was unable to see before. She still has her unhealthy, toxic traits, but at least she's aware of them and she's working on them. I have to say my father too, because like I said, he does call me out of the blue, and he has these moments. Maybe I'm a catalyst for him and I don't even know it. I am his caregiver, so I'm around a lot. And when I see the toxic traits come up, I kind of reverse it with love. And they don't want to accept it, but because I created these boundaries, they have no choice, I guess. So maybe those boundaries are helping. Both of my parents, I'm proud of both of them actually. They've both come a long way. Unhealed, but they've come a long way. I feel this family I grew up in was the family that I picked before I incarnated. Well, it's because it was the family I picked before I incarnated. I chose this family. I chose my parents. We have soul contracts. Everybody that's in my life right now, they're all characters in this story, in my story. I created the narrative before I incarnated. However, free will allows us to change it as many times as we wish as we go along the way, okay? In this story, on this timeline, I needed them to help wake up my psychic gifts. The dysfunction I grew up in triggered me in many ways unconsciously. They were blessings. They were blessings in disguise. They were also lessons. That is the most positive thing I can say about my upbringing. It wasn't for nothing. It was, there's a reason, and my video is already too long to go into it, but it made me the woman I am today, the person I am today, talking to you guys. It's helped me heal. They were my blessings. Definitely, they were my blessings. It helped me to become the healer, the intuitive empath that I am today. It helped me help me read and feel energy. It helped me become the mother I am, the wife I am, the daughter I am today. I'm also able to bring awareness to other souls struggling with family dysfunction that may be similar to mine. I'm a catalyst for change. And it created me, or it helped me become this catalyst so that the world around me can change. And I had to go through all of these dynamics to put me in this vibration that I'm currently in to change for the good. Because I mean, if I didn't heal, the catalyst I would just be a tornado. I'd be like a hurricane. A lot of the family dysfunction I consumed as a child bled into my adulthood, because I was still unhealed. And it did affect my kids, my two older kids. My son was diagnosed as ODD, oppositional defiant disorder. He was oppositionally defiant due to my dysfunctional traits. He was seeking attention and love. And I was young and I was selfish and I didn't show it to him. I didn't know that then, but having awareness of this dynamic, I know it now, and I'm able to heal from it and talk to my kids about it. I hug my kids. I hit them up every night to tell them I love them. I'm always checking on them. So I hope that I'm able to be the change for them. I'm breaking the cycle and it ends with me. My hope is my children lead by example. Most likely, my youngest will continue the healing. I was more healed and aware by the time that I had her. I see her healing and love shared, I see her sharing it with her siblings and her nieces and her nephews. She's a beautiful, loving child. And I do wish that my other two children got the mom that I am today, but there is a reason for everything. So I really don't have any regrets. There is a purpose, and it has to be this way because this is the way I chose, and this is the way that they chose it to be when they incarnated. I do understand that our journeys are different, and we all have paths to walk for different reasons. So I'm sending love and healing energy to all of you that stuck around until the end of this video. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. If you have the courage and the will to seek it out, you just have to put in a little work to get there. Try to find peace and awareness to help you heal, because awareness is key. Forgiveness is freeing. And I hope that my perspective helped you to be able to broaden yours. I love you.